Okay, so it looks like I'm live. I haven't done any live streaming before, so I have no idea if this is working. I'm going to be testing on my laptop just to make sure all the data is streaming out correctly. My audio isn't completely gone. The things seem to be moving, but I'm just going to be double checking on my laptop for 1 second. But today I'm going to be mostly playing around with the new Proxmox 7.3, and I'm going to be just messing around with some other server stuff, and I'll answer questions if anyone has them. So let me just get this audio tested on my laptop I have to this side. I think it sounds okay. Let me know if it sounds weird. The little test I did seems okay-ish, so I'm going to assume that's fine. I believe this is going to get recorded and put up later if you want to watch it then. But yeah, let's get into testing Proxmox 7.3. So 7.3 came out pretty recently. I believe it was this morning for me. So if I look up Proxmox 7.3, they have a download available on their website now, so I can get this ISO image. They have the release notes right here. It looks like a relatively small. Looks like someone, Steve Berry says he can hear me, so that's really good. I did everything somewhat correctly. But Proxmox 7.3 overall is a pretty small improvement. Updated a lot of the internal packages that they're building it on, optional newer kernel, updated commute, LXC, ZFS, Ceph, which I don't really use. And then, what is it? CPU pinning. This is what I'm looking forward to testing the most, because I did a video previously about CPU pinning in Proxmox where I hacked on some scripts and did that. I'm curious how exactly they're doing it in their interface. Looks like they changed the default controller, which I believe if I look at is a 7.2 system I have here. So if I just call it tests, just put something in here. I want to just see what it selects by default. For disks, it selects SCSI. Yeah, SCSI's fine. I believe VirtIO is slightly better, but SCSI is fine. I think my testing, it's pretty close to VirtIO. It's much better than SATA IDE is. So that's interesting. Upstream best practices. I'm not exactly sure. Aligned VirtIO networking. I'm not sure. It looks like they improved some networking things, and I'm not exactly sure what that means under the hood. IO ring by CFS back disks. Okay. So if you're doing that. New major LXC version. I really don't use containers as much as I should be. A lot of it is I'm just used to using VMs and having a full system running. So, oh, let me share the screen. I have picture-in-picture. Let me make this bigger. So this is, now you can actually see what I'm doing. So yeah, new LXC version for containers, new versions of OSs coming, bind mounts up. I need to try more mounting. I think it's possible to mount a host directly onto a container, but I need to try that. New pre-made templates. They updated some other templates. Okay. And then the other interesting thing, it's only a tech preview now, but they added the resource scheduling, which means it should try to migrate to a different node that has the most resources available, instead of just uploading to the node that is the most, instead of just uploading to whatever node. So if you have multiple devices and a high availability cluster, that's going to be nice. It's going to be a pain to pay with for what I have here, because that's going to need multiple systems to do that. They updated the cluster APIs. Cluster's been working generally quite well from what I've seen. It normally doesn't have issues. Improved backup support. The notes template, they fixed some issues there. Added repeat missed. Allowing one to opt out of repeated behavior. Running missed jobs in a new boot. Okay. For single file restore now is the option of increasing its memory to handle ZFS datasets inside the guest. Okay, I'm going to take a look at that. I'm not sure off my top of my head what that is. Files deletes the notes and logs. Okay. ZFS dRAID support gets an option in the GUI. I think they've actually had this support in the command line for a while, and I actually haven't played with dRAID that much, but it should be more flexible and allow for better RAID arrays to handle like a failure better than traditional RAID Z or just a traditional RAID will let you handle. So hopefully that'll work well. I want to play around with dRAID a little bit more. Yeah, and they say 15 plus disks or a medium amount of very large disks, where likely there'd be a very long reboot, where you'd likely have a very long period of time that a rebuild would take. Don't spin mouse bogus errors. Storage replication. This is another, only matters if you have a cluster, so I'd like to get my hands on a cluster to play with that for. PVE Z-Sync. Oh, does this let you... I need to play with PVE Z-Sync, because it looks like it's using ZFS to send our files, which would be kind of nice, because ZFS send is a really handy way to send data to a different one. So hopefully that ZFS sync will work well. Ceph, I need to play with Ceph more. Improved naming of web. It looks like they've improved access control a little bit, but I wish they'd let you limit access control to like the amount of threads or cores that a process has access to. Because I've set up some deployments where I'd like maybe it's like you give a user, I want to give like a user access to maybe like 32 gigs of RAM and 8 cores maximum and limit that user to that much performance. This might make sense in something like if you're trying to rent out a certain amount of space or like share it. I've done it where I'm sharing it with someone else. And it's like, hey, you can have access to it, but I don't want you to use everything. I only want you to use some amount. I don't believe there's a way to do that with groups. I can limit access to different storage, but I can't limit access to CPU, RAM, or... I think you can limit with you can limit networking, but you can't do CPU or RAM there. Firing network. Firewall networking improvements. They got better offline mirror support. It looks like you can do it with... It looks like you actually need a valid subscription to use the offline mirror. I remember seeing this a little bit ago, which is handy if you don't have internet access on your cluster, but since I do, that's not a huge thing. I can try that, but I don't see that being super useful. I see internets being more and more required on clusters, but I know there is environments where you have to make sure it's fully disconnected, or you don't want it connected to things like Proxmox servers. You don't want to connect it to anything public if you don't have to. So it'd be really nice to have that. What else? Better offline management. New mail. I need to play with trying to get it to forward it over something like Gmail or another mail server, because by default it wants it to send over SMTP, which is nice, but the problem is if you have like a residential network or a lot of smaller businesses, they don't let you send outboard on, I believe, 0.25, which is SMTP. So they limit it because there's a lot of ways you can do spam with that, and they don't want you to do it. Mobile app, I'm looking forward to trying that. I'm probably going to put BlueStacks, I forget the name of the Android emulator on this computer because I don't actually have an Android phone, and I want to try it out and see how well it works. Because currently, if I go try a mobile app with Proxmox, I either get the desktop interface like this, but it's really small, and it's almost useless in my opinion. And the other thing I can get is I can get like a really dumbed down one that just kind of lists the VMs I have, and doesn't let me do anything to it, which is almost too simplified for what I'd like. So I think it'll be a middle ground that lets me, like, hopefully it'll let me actually see the VMs, shut down them, maybe do some minor config changes, so I'm looking forward to playing with that. Do they list where they have their mobile app? No. Okay. Let me search Google Play Store. Let me search for apps here. So let's see what they have. Proxmox Figure. Okay, this looks like their first party app. Install 50 plus downloads. Yeah, cool. I'm going to go download this and play with it on BlueStacks. Probably during this video if I have time. So I want to play with that, and looking at the images of it, yeah, that's a lot better than the web interface I remember seeing on my phone. Hopefully they bring this to iPhones, because that's what I often use, but I'm glad they have it for Android. I'm going to play around with it in a little bit soon. So the first thing I was going to get into was just playing with it. So I made this prox test 1 VM, which is just installed from their Proxmox 7.3 ISO image. Looks like it's grabbed an IP, and time to log into the web interface and see what I get. So standard message, and then logging into it. Let's save it. Standard no subscription message, and yeah, it looks like Proxmox 7.3-3. Curious where the -3 comes from, because it says, I believe, ISO, it's ISO 1, so 7.3-1, and I didn't update it all past that, so that's interesting. But, yeah, looks like Proxmox. I'm going to run an update on this guy first, because they don't have a network installer, so there might be updates directly from it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disable this one, and I'm going to go add my no subscription. There's Eats Beats, yes, the Office reference. I like that. Looking at the comments, let me add the repository for the non-subscription here, and we're going to reload that. To my knowledge, reload is essentially the same as running apt update, or it's refresh here. So now this is running apt update, and then upgrade's running apt upgrade. And then when it upgrades it, I'm going to add some more disks so I can play with the new ZFS thing and see how that works. Let me actually get BlueStacks installing on this computer and see how that works on here. I'm just curious. So, yeah, so I'm going to get that going. Looks like it's updating. Is there any new packages? It says task OK. Doesn't tell me exactly what there is. So yeah, it looks like it's fully up to date. So they haven't released any new packages, or Debian hasn't either, because it's also using a Debian repositories. Hasn't released any new packages since the ISO image was released, so that's cool. So I'm going to shut this guy down anyways, because I want to add some disks so I can play with the new ZFS on here and see how that goes. So let's get back to my hypervisor that's running it. And on this guy, I'm going to go add a few disks. Yeah, I'm installing BlueStacks in the background too. Hopefully that all works okay. But I'm going to go add just a couple of hard disks on here and see how it works. I don't know, let's do 47 gigs, something random. Yeah, let's add a lot of these. So this might take a minute to add all these disks. My other plan is this hypervisor here, which is running 7.2. This guy is my single LGA 2011-3. It's an ASUS server. I did a video on it a while ago, and I've been just using it for kind of testing purposes mostly. So a lot of my recent videos when playing around with Proxmox or something else has been done on this system. So it's changing really fast. So I'm just going to install it and see what it is. I have a couple more systems running Proxmox that I want to install 7.3 on, but they're doing things right now, so I can't upgrade it and show it during this live stream. But I'll let you guys know if there's weird issues. Since it's a relatively small upgrade, I expect it to be mostly just upgrade and it's fine. So let's put a couple more disks in for this guy. So with dRAID 3, dRAID 3 is kind of like RAID Z3, or maybe like a RAID 7, I guess, if it existed. So it would have 3 parity disks. Camera. Oh, haha, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. I think my camera went to sleep. I will walk back on screen soon. I think I set you to never go to sleep. What? Okay, auto power off should be disabled on here, but that's annoying. Thank you for pointing out, the camera thing. I'm using a DSLR as a camera, so I think I set it to never turn off automatically, and I'm doing it over HDMI capture, so I think that would mean it never turns it off. I'm not really sure exactly what's going on there, unfortunately, so I'm going to hopefully work that out. I'm going to do some more testing after this guy to try to find a way to make these cameras not turn off, because, you know, DSLR is still made for stills primarily, and video is a cool feature, so there's a lot of tweaking to make them actually into great video cameras. But I think I was getting into dRAID lets you have 3 parity drives. So that would mean if you have 4 drives minimum, 3 would be parity and 1 would be usable data. But you probably wouldn't want to set up with that. With 3 parity, you're probably thinking at least 10 drives. So 7 would be data drives, 3 would be parity drives. That would make sense to me. So let's get 10 drives in here. I can automate this, but I don't feel like doing that right now. So I'm going to be just doing this manually, adding a few more disks to this VM. Right here, 47. What else can I talk about? 4, 5, 6, 7, 3 more. So this would be, I believe, 9, and this is going to be my last one before I turn it on. Cool. So let's fire this VM back up, and it should be accessible via my via this page in just a second once it finishes rebooting. And let me scroll to make this text bigger because I know it can be hard to read on small phones. I know smartphones are super common to be watching stuff on now. So back to this. If I go in this system now and I go into, looks like it actually finally reloaded the web page. Yeah, so it's just finally refreshed now. So if I go under on this guy, disks, yeah, I can see all of these VDC. These are the VirtIO networking drives. They show the size here. It's 47, I believe, gigabytes, which is 50.47 gigabytes. I'm still annoyed that it's the base 10 versus base 2 naming, but that's fine. Let's get into ZFS now. So if I go to ZFS, I can create a ZFS pool. I'm going to call it test stream. Just that's what I'm doing. RAID level, single disk, mirror, RAID Z. Let's try dRAID 3. Data devs and spares. I really need to learn more about dRAID. I forget. Let's just add all of these. I don't think the order matters. Disks. If I remember right. So the spares in dRAID is the amount of, like, they're not quite hot spares, but they're not quite, it's kind of between a parity and a hot spare, so I think it has some data on it. And then the data ones are traditional data drives, and then the 3 here is the amount of parity drives. So it looks like if I add this all up, that's the amount of drives I need. So if I turn this down to 5, it should be 5 plus 2 plus 3. I think that's 10, so if I hit create, it should let me do that. Yeah, it looks like it's creating a shift at the 12, the game, and there we go. And let me pull up my command line because I want to see how that's going. And I'm just going to open a terminal here. Let me know if the text is the wrong size, but I'm just going to SSH into this. Say .1.109. So I've SSH'd into this box, and I type my password on. So now I'm SSH'd into this box, and I can run ZFS list. I can see I've installed it on ZFS, and I have my test stream, which has 207 gigabytes available. Now I'm going to do zpool list-v, and that should show me the dRAID 3, 5 data, 10 total, I'm guessing. I really need to look into dRAID more. And then 2 spare. So actually, I'm going to go copy a little bit of data on this thing and get testing it. So in order to copy some data, let's create a few virtual machines. Just checking stream stuff again. Actually, I can't create virtual machines because I'm in a VM, but I can create containers. So I'm going to go download some container templates. I believe they've added some new templates for newer OSs. So here's 22.04. Was that supported in the last version? Container templates. Wait. Oh, here it is. Templates 22.04. Nope. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Looks like they've updated it. So let's just be curious. They have 22.04, 22.10 for Ubuntu. Has that been added? Hide the turnkey Linux and sort by name. Oh, so it looks like it has the same list. I believe they've added support for newer stuff, 37 for that. I'm not sure exactly. Let me look at container support. I think they said something, new major support for newer distribution versions. It looks like they're preparing it for newer versions, but it looks like it has the same versions now. It says it has the pre-made templates for like 37, Ubuntu 22.10, but so does that. And I'm not sure if this means that they have, I'm not sure if this means that they just updated it for all of them, because that's what it looks like they did. It doesn't look like you need to upgrade Footer's newer images, so I'm just going to do Fedora 37 is fine. It's going to download it on there. And then, what else do I want to play with now? So that's set up, and it should be, I can create a little container now. Yeah, it looks like it's done downloading. I'm going to call it test. Putting a super simple password in. Guess it's a test one. Fedora disks, giving it my test one. Let's give it 140 gigs of space, couple cores. Memory's fine, networks. I'm going to give it a static IP address. 95 is available, /24. Oops. Oh, that's a gateway address. And then this is one that you don't say on the 95/24. I'm not going to set up DHCP. DNS is fine. Confirm. Finish. Hopefully this will be setting up soon. So once this finishes setting up this little VM, or container actually, oops, I am going to use dd in here to create an empty file, and then I can see how failing disks in RAID Z goes. So actually I'm going to go options before I start it, or resources, and then go under the root disk. Oh, I already changed the size. Oops. I'm going to go start it now, log into the console, and in a second or two I can log in as root. So, and then I will run dd if equals /u random, of equals test.g, bs equals 1m, bs is block size, bigger block size is faster because it's less big chunks for the processor. Count is how many it does it, so if I do, that's 10 megs, 100 megs, gig, 10 gigs, 100 gigs, that might take a while though. And then we'll do status equals progress. So yeah, looks like it's copying at about 300 megabytes per second. If I take a look on this system again for zpool iostat-v1, which is a way to automatically see a refreshing amount of the IO status, looks like, actually, let me change -1 into -10, and it should average out, instead of over 1 second, it should average it over 10. So if I wait 10 seconds for it to refresh, I should be able to see my speed here. So it says about 280 megs a second, so this is 460. And it's a little less than double, so that's telling me there's, actually, let's do a little math right now. I have a calculator. So if it's, so if I'm writing at 280 megs a second and divide that by 7 with 1,000 amount of data disks, that would be 40 per drive, times it by 10, 400. It's a little bit higher than that, but it's a little bit lower than double. Makes me think it might be, also might just kind of be this container is using up all of its RAM, but it's been pretty steady here. I'm not sure exactly. It looks like it's writing at roughly double. And I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure the way dRAID set up is if I fail one of these, it doesn't have to do a full parity reconstruct, because that's what those disks have. Those spare disks have. And that's why it's recommended for large data sets, because you don't really have to do a full rebuild, because you kind of have something between a parity and hot spare automatically there. Now, I don't often run disks of that size very often, but I believe that should be a cool feature of that. It's one of those, I'd love to have more hardware to play with that sort of stuff with. I'm trying to get my hands on it, but there's only so much hardware I can use right now. Yeah, but playing around with that guy. The other thing I want to take a look at is to see what is this guy limited by. So let's run top on here for a second. And it looks like the dd command, which is running in here, is running at about max CPU. So I'm guessing it's limited by dd actually on this system, and not it's being limited by dd and not the actual disks on the system or ZFS. So if I want to take a look at ZFS or disk usage, I can log into the hypervisor. So I'm going to log into my root account. Right now I'm going to be logging into the hypervisor of my 7.3 test system. So that is this 7.2 system, which has that VM running. I'm also going to update this guy soon, so we're going to just log into it at root at 80. Yeah, these aren't very secure, but these are just test systems. I've also had people ask, I really love using tmux because I can have like all these monitoring things and they just always stay running when I leave the system. And then if I run something Hey, RSpeech, I'm glad for making helpful videos for you. I try to make that. But back here, I use tmux because then if I run a task and I lose my SSH connection, it just keeps running it. And it's also nice because if I have like all these windows, because I kind of like having absurd amounts of windows, it'll maintain it. So I can actually run iostat-xm1 is it wide enough? No, it's not. So I can just run iostat-m. Whoa, that's a lot of disks. What can I do? Let's just do xm. I'm trying to think. -m. Okay, so I can scroll up here, and it looks like megabytes written per second. If I look at my disks here, wow, that's pretty low. So it looks like I'm not pushing my drives, because this guy is essentially running on a 6 SSD RAID 0. So it has quite a bit of disk I/O to pull from, and I've been using it for disk tests. Data is not the most secure, but it's fast. Let's take another look and see if it's finished at. It's mostly we're done. And to add a little bit more, to what the system is doing, from what I believe in 7.3, it should be as simple as running apt update and then apt upgrade, because I don't think they changed any of the repositories. Because it looks like it's all the same names here. Let's take a peek at that actually a little bit closer. So if I go into repositories, it's all Bullseye and then Bullseye for, Bullseye for non-subscription. And if I look at this new one of 7.3, under repositories, okay, getting this working. Yeah, it's all Bullseye. So it looks like 7.3 is mostly just they changed the number, they added a feature, but it's not a large upgrade. And because they did that, I believe that means the upgrade should be fairly painless for most users. So I'm going to just try it and see if it breaks anything. And let's see if my guess is right. Yeah, it looks like 46 packages. That's relatively large. So I'm going to do apt list upgradable. JDE8. Let's pipe that into less so I can scroll through it. But it looks like we're getting a new version of grep, few libraries, yeah. All these libpve, that looks like all their new Proxmox 7.3. Yep, you can see that 7.3 is their new packages. Some of these are still 7.2 marked. I'm curious how they're pulling those names, but I'm not exactly sure. The cluster gets the new update, container, firewall. Nah, looks like that's 7.3 Proxmox VE. I'm guessing this is the main one here. 7.3 is the big guy. We'll see what takes the longest not. And then if I run apt upgrade will download all these packages and actually upgrade the system. Looks like 435 megabytes of disk space used. And I believe it'll tell me 134 megabyte download and 435 megabytes of disk space used. So this guy actually is running on a 16 gigabyte RAID 1 as boot. So yeah, wow, I've barely touched it. I've used less than 2 gigabytes on it. I have 11 gigs available. So if you're running off a 16 gigabyte drive, it looks like it won't be causing an issue. That's interesting. Looks like it's still downloading. And I believe apt update and apt upgrade should be identical if running refresh and then upgrade here in the GUI. So it does the exact same stuff, and it looks like, yeah, these are the same packages here. It's just you get the GUI interface here versus the command line interface that I was using previously. I'm almost certain it's running the exact same tools. I often use the command line because I'm just used to using it, but it does give you the option to do it here. Hopefully, the command line, yep, that guy's going to be done. So it's just generated its data. So now I'm going to be switching back to my 7.3 test VM and seeing how failing disks in dRAID works. So let's go back to my Proxmox test 1 VM. Oh, looks like it's loading. I'm guessing sometimes it can get unhappy when you're upgrading all the packages under it. Yeah, that's what I'm guessing it is. You really probably shouldn't do it at the middle, but there it goes. I'm guessing it was updating like some sort of service or something that was needed. And sometimes apt does stuff, and the other Linux upgrade tools like DNF can cause issues if you do an upgrade when stuff is running. I know DNF at least recommends you like do an offline upgrade where to like boot into a special mode, upgrade everything, and then reboot into the full OS again, and that's probably a good idea. But as you saw there, you reload it and it's working fine. So I'm going to go detach that one, and since it's virt.io, it should be able to do it hot. So I've just detached a disk, and then I'm going to go look at that command line for that VM again. So if I run zpool status, that should be here, I can see that that drive has become unavailable. And then what it looks like it's doing is it's actually re-slivering it right now, because those kind of hot spares, kind of parity drives will automatically re-sliver it. So let's take a look at zpool. Actually, let's just run this continuously and see it update it. So it's re-slivering very quickly. It's scanning, doing it very quickly. It's re-slivered about 35% done at 5 gigabytes, which would make me think it's about 15 gigabytes. So if I run zpool iostat, it'll show me where it's actually copying data to and from. So if I take a look at it, it is reading from all of them, because whenever you do a re-sliver in ZFS, it also does a scrub, so it just reads everything and makes sure it's checksummed correctly. And then VDE is gone, so it can't be accessing any data. And then this new dRAID 300 disk has a lot of data being written to it. Now, I'm kind of curious what happens when it finishes, because is this like a virtual drive that it created, or is this going to make it like lower the amount of devices? So I'm going to just probably have to wait until that's done. I'm going to switch it back to status so I can see when it's done. Overall, wow, that's pretty fast. It's not a ton of data, but it did re-sliver very quickly. I might do a comparison of re-slivering zRAID versus RAID-Z, because I know one thing is if you're working with large disks these days, like if you have those 10s or 20 terabyte drives and you have like 10, 15, 20 of them, it can take a very long time to re-sliver. And since you're pushing the rest of the system really hard, copying all those bytes from those hard drives, if they have a failure, there's probably a higher than expected chance that they're going to fail at that moment. So, yeah. And hopefully, I think it's done now. It's almost done. Yep. Okay, so it looks like the scrub's still in progress, where it's reading all the data just to make sure the checksums are correct. But what it looks like it did is it re-slivered that device with what I'm pretty sure is a essentially virtual device in dRAID. So I guess it's degraded, but it has all of the devices on. Okay. Yeah, and there, oh, there we go. I didn't see that. So there's the spare devices. So I think dRAID is kind of like RAID-Z, where all the drives essentially have everything. So it says a spare is in use, even though it is a spare is in use, but it's not a dedicated spare drive. It's kind of like, so in this case, since those 2 out of 10 drives are spare, it would mean 1/5 of the data is on there is like a spare drive, and then 3/10 of it would be parity data. So I think it's all spread out like that. So it says it's degraded because VDE is unavailable, but it has a spare that's replaced it. So if you're in this situation, you should replace the spare drive here, but it otherwise has no data integrity issues. And it's making good progress on that scan. So let's continue being mean to this and remove another disk. Let's see how it handles that. I'm going to change my timing because I don't think it's refreshing. So there, we got another one. So now it looks like both of my spares are in use, and I can see that dRAID 30-1 device and -0 have both been used. It's degraded, but all the actual parity and data drives are still there. So that looks like it's working correctly. It's doing another re-sliver, and yeah, it looks like it's being pretty darn fast, mostly because I have high-speed SSDs, most likely. Oh, yeah, the wallpaper. Actually, that's a picture I took. So, I think that's, yeah, that's like car, if known. Yeah, so that's a picture I took one night. I think it came out cool, so I left it as my wallpaper, and I'd forget that I left it there. So, I don't know. It's a fun car. Back to doing mean things to Proxmox. This is my 7.2 physical system updating. Looks like it's almost done, just copying the kernel right now. And then the OpenSSH client for the 7.3 VM, almost done reslivering. I think it's reslivering about the same amount of data, but yeah, it should be. There we go. And it looks like, yeah, there's read errors because they were removed, write errors because it couldn't write that data. And even though it says it has a, oh, that's cool. Mine's a 13. Awesome cars for the FRS or FT86. Yeah, so it has the essentially two parity drives have been used, 2 spare drives have been used. There's still 3 parity and 5 data. So I'm going to just kind of keep breaking stuff on here until it completely dies and see how that goes. So I believe I can fail 5 of these in this configuration before it, I can fail 2 spares before it has any parity loss, and I can fail 3 parities before there's any data loss. So I'm going to just keep doing that until it's fully dead. There you go. What is it complaining about? Errors with processing the kernel. Okay. Looks like it's having issues with its kernel. Current flush IO error. I've seen this a few times. I'm guessing it is. How is it doing boot? I've seen it had that sort of error before where it says it can't install the latest kernel because the kernel's under /boot and that is mounted in a separate directory and it's a smaller amount of space. So /boot, where would that be? I feel like cd/boot -h dot. It's only 275 megs, so that isn't that big. I'm going to apt install ncdu, which is a nice little utility for seeing graphically how much space is being used by different files in a directory in a Linux command line. Hopefully it finishes installing that stuff soon. Yeah. And it sometimes in Linux, and this is what I'm guessing happened here, is if you have multiple older kernel revisions and a smaller /boot partition, it'll run out of space in /boot. For most of the Linux systems I've seen, they don't have like a self-cleanout of /boot, so it just, you kind of have to manually do it. I'm not sure exactly what their plan or strategy, if distros have also dealt with it, but I've ran into it every once in a while, and in my experience, just deleting old kernels does it. Kind of cool if they automatically added a script. Seems relatively easy to add a script to do that, but I'm guessing it's just it's not really a big issue. I'm not sure. I don't pay too much attention, or it might just be going off the wrong thing here and doing it. This guy might also fail. I'm guessing this guy's going to fail right now too, but let's see about that. I'm going to take a look at this guy. I'm guessing it's going to fail because it's doing the exact same thing where it's trying to copy that kernel there. And it's trying to copy the kernel to the same location. So it sees, I think that when I'm installing ncdu, it's seeing that the last one failed, so it's trying to redo that same device. Copying and comparing on /disk/by/uuid/that. Okay, so it's using the Proxmox boot. I believe this guy also has an issue because I have a RAID 1 on my boot drives on this system with 2 16GB SSDs, and one of them has kind of failed. I haven't fixed it yet. So let me try to... I should probably get that guy working. Not sure exactly what's going on with that one, so I just haven't messed with it. Yeah, I'm going to poke at that later because I'm not sure exactly what's going on. But I believe that's the issue. It looks like it's copying 5.15.64 and 64 and 74. Is that right? Is that the numbers it's copying? 64 and 74. So if I run Oh, it's still working on it. But I believe if I run ls there, that's where I can find out if it's actually working correctly. So that'll be interesting to see if it's actually, there it goes, copying. I want to see if it's actually copying those files there, and because I have a failed boot drive, it's complaining, or if it's because there's not enough space. It might be because I have a failed boot drive. I think the thing about deleting the files was wrong, but I know that's an issue I've ran into on past on other OSs. I believe Proxmox, when using ZFS by default, /boot is not a separate partition. I think the EFI partition is separate though. So it actually has a lot of space to work with because it essentially has all of / to work with, the whole boot drive, whereas I think a lot of OSs like Ubuntu have a separate ZFS, actually a separate ZFS pool in Ubuntu for just boot files. So if you fill it up with a couple, so if there's multiple kernels that it gets filled up with, it will have issues and it will fail installing. So hopefully it'll finish that soon. I'm guessing it's just waiting on it to fail, which has been annoying. I'm going to poke around on my other screen on trying to get BlueStacks going, because I want to just see how well that works. Searching Google Play. Okay, looks like it's going to take a second to do that. And that's waiting. And here we go. Yep, looks like I'm switching back to my 7.3 system that I was failing a ton of disks, and it looks like it is done okay, so it's time to fail another disk for it and just see how it goes. And I'm guessing it's going to see it about now. It's going to wait for it to refresh. I think I have it set to refresh every 4 seconds, I believe so. So once it does that, spare 1, spare 2. I don't think it's seeing anything, which is odd. It should see it. There's something about it's not refreshing very quickly, I want to say. But I feel like I failed another disk, so that's interesting. It hasn't noticed it. Oh, there it goes. Right, yeah. VDH has done it, and it can't really do anything. It's just a failed disk, but it's degraded, so I can still access all my data. So yeah, I can still if I switch over to this guy again, and I look at my test one, I think I already had that open, but that's fine. Stay on page. Stay on page. All right, leave page. Okay, but if I run like ls, it's being a little slow on me, which is annoying, but if I run ls, I can still get my test.img file, and then maybe I want to do like md5 sumnat test file. It'll take a second to read all of it, but I believe if I switch back to iostat, it'll show that I'm reading data from all of my drives. Oh, there goes my camera, I think. Again, let me wake that guy up. I need to fix that issue. I think it's still turning off after 30 minutes, seems right, but I don't know. This is annoying. I'm not going to poke at it now, but I think it's going to sleep after 30 minutes for a reason. It's still not on. Yeah, this is annoying. What? Oh, because I'm in the menu. Okay. I think it should be working now. Okay, let's get back. Yay, it's working. Yay. Okay, so I did run a checksum on it, but the other thing I think I realized is I have enough RAM in this system that I want to say I almost have the full 100 gig file and RAM on here, so I don't get to measure disk performance very well. But looks like it is running MD5 sum, which means at least it can read the file. Let's go fail a few more disks for fun. So I have failed 2 of my spares, all of my spares, and then 1 out of 3 of my parodies. So I'm going to fail number 2 out of my 3 of my parodies. Won't be able to do anything like the spares because there's nothing for it to replace it with. But once it figures out it has an issue, it should show soon. It seems to take a second. I probably have to touch a little bit of data, because otherwise... Now, let's run MD5 sum. What did I got? Yeah, test.ing. Now, oh, that's why I wasn't showing any disk I/O, because I just ran the program with no input. That would definitely do it. I'm guessing. Yep, there you go. There's another drive failed. And then, now it's actually going to be showing correctly, but I'm reading it at 500 megabytes per second. And I'm reading it from my replace drive here. Replace the drive here. All of these. And just for fun, let me go add another disk to it and see how adding a disk works. So I'm going to go add like, I don't know, 50 gig. Let's make it stand out a little bit. So it looks like, let's do. So I'm going to do zpool replace test stream /dev/ let's find out what that new disk is. It should be slightly bigger. VDC is my new disk. So if I run, let's go back, zpool status. So VDC is my new drive. If I run zpool status, I can see that VDH has failed, so I'm going to replace it. So if I do zpool replace /dev/ I have to put pool name in here first. Test stream /dev/ VDH /dev/ VDC. It should just replace it. It looks like it doesn't have an error, so if I run zpool status -v, yeah, there you go. Now it's replacing one of my drives. I'm guessing that's what they want you to do, and then keep the spares for the last drives. I'm not sure if you can hot add and remove. I'm not going to look too much more into dRAID, but it looks like it's doing everything it should be doing. From here, I might actually hibernate and say this. Yes, thank you for introducing me to Turnkey. I see that comment. I played with that a while ago, as it's kind of a cool, like, simple way to do some tasks, especially for people who like to have a GUI. I've gotten used to the terminal personally, but I know a lot of people like to have just a nice interface to see things. And one of the great things with the interfaces is, like, you can look at all the options. Whereas if you're in a terminal, you don't know what all you can do in here. Like, if I do zpool something, yeah, these are all my options, but it's a lot simpler to look at this list. So I think having GUI options for that, it'd be cool, in my opinion, if they added a first part. I don't know how they do it well, so I'm not going to argue for it. I think the turnkey is a reasonable solution for a simple Samba server. Hello, Ral Hamidi. I'm sorry, I'm so bad at pronunciation, so. Okay, back to poking at this. App dist upgrade, yep. Oh, that's where it runs it. Yep, you're right, Jeff. That's probably the correct way to do it. That's probably the actual command it runs when you do it that. Okay. What guy is this guy? This is... Okay, what this? Let's actually be curious. Okay, that's... I've already ran upgrade. And I'm... Yep, that's probably right. So it does it. I'm curious if it's going to do anything, because I've already upgraded it, but as you said, you should use dist upgrade, as said by Jeff. I'm sorry. And it should just be able to run the script. So let's see if it does that correctly now. I do know I have a bad boot drive in here, which isn't going to make it happy, though. And for comparison, if I run uname-a, I'm running on 5.15.64 on here now. And on my 7.3 test system, I am running on... And for my 7.3, 5.15.74. So slightly newer kernel. And that's what it looks like it was trying to install. Let's go back to that. Yeah, generating the init ramfs. So yeah, that you should do. Use dist upgrade because that cleans it out, and that's probably what I've been doing wrong and why some of my systems have a ton of kernels laying around, is because I'm not running that cleanup as part of dist upgrade. So thanks for showing me that. There's a whole lot of little things about Linux and OSs that I don't know, because there's so many just little programs that do their own thing, and I try to learn as much as I can, but there's only so far I can go. And I'm really thankful to people who show me this. I've actually learned a whole lot from you guys in the community, so thank you. Not 5.19. Let's see, what kernel did they say they were gonna use? Yeah, 5. Okay, so that's the kernel they said they're gonna use. Why are they using new 5.19 as opt-in? I'm gonna have to take a look at what that means. Okay, let me poke through the documentation. Okay, I'm gonna go through the documentation and see if I find the 5.19 reference. 100%.x. It doesn't look like this has been updated yet to support 5.19. So actually, let's do I'm not used to using app search. Let me look up how exactly to use app search. I'm going to look up app search because I think if I'm going to try to search for 5.19, I do apt star 5.19 star. I think that'll search for anything with 5.19 in the name. Hopefully. Let me know if that's not the correct command. So that's searching now. I'm also going to, give me 1 second to get BlueStacks set up on here. Because, oh, dang it. I want to be using BlueStacks to test their updated app. Oh, dang it. I have to use 2FA. Sorry, this is annoying. Apt cache strategy. Yes. I think apt.cache will. I think apt cache is gonna search it. Okay. I'm gonna have to poke around with apt cache and see where I can get 5.19. Actually, on BlueStacks, I have just installed the Proxmox app, which is actually my first time playing with it because I don't normally run an Android phone. Self-signed cert. Yep, that's. Not using a default port. What about remote console? Spice is important, but they don't. Oh, okay. So I'm going to install Opaque. Ooh, okay. I'm not paying for that right now, unfortunately, but. Yeah, it looks like the only way to use Spice is a third-party one. Curious if they could just use. I'm curious if they could just use the VNC in the browser as part of this and have like an embedded browser, but let me turn off validate SSL certificates and oh, I guess I didn't need the 8006, but I've added it. So used to adding the, I believe 109 is the correct one. Okay. I've heard people who really like VMware's ESXi because they have a... No, that's PAM. I'm using PAM for the Authentication Manager. I've heard people like using VMware ESXi because it has a native desktop connection, but... Okay, I'm gonna have to poke this a bit more. Let's try a different system I've run. I believe 90. Do I have to be running? Okay, because I'm almost certain. Yeah, oh, 80. And I guess seeing, I think it says HTTPS is implied, so if you just type the IP address, it'll add the HTTPS and the 8006. And there we go. CPU cores, that's my RAM usage. There's my nodes, because it's only a single node cluster. Online, offline, containers. And hey, cool, I can click on it and see it. I can click on this guy. What happens if I click console? Oh, it does let me do it through a browser. Huh? Thinking. I'm not sure what it's doing right now. I think that we go home again. Maybe that's what they mean about spice only? Ooh, looks like it killed it. Okay. So I have virtual machines. I can see everything. Let's go back to that Proxmox test run and just try it again. Hopefully I was unlucky. Oh, it requires a trusted SSL certificate. That's probably why. If I really want to, I could do that, but I can't do it at this moment. If I look at options, start a boot device, use tablet for pointer. Oh, okay, so that's cool. That's all the option menus. That's nice. Can't add anything custom, but other than that, and then it looks like I can use Spice if I pay for that app, which I'm not going to do right now, though. Can I change, like, files? Can I change its configuration? I got power settings, so I can do that. I can, console I can't use. Options give me these options. Is it maybe I just can't change this because it's running? I don't know. And backup gives me the option to back up to target storage, so I could do it like here. I'm actually not going to do that because it's, I think it has quite a bit of files. But I can't poke with the hardware. That's either I'm clicking at it wrong or that's a little disappointing. That's one of the things I like to do. API tokens, groups, roles, sites. Oh, these are multiple sessions if you have that. And resources is VMs containers. Can't complain. VITZ3. I actually haven't tested A time equals off with PBS. I should do that. I'm going to add it to my list of things to do. I right now can't. I right now do not. I have not tested that, so I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if PBS is using A time to keep track of when files are being written to and read from. But from what I think, actually my story behind A time of why I found it was there was one night where I had like trying to transfer VMs from hard drives to SSDs, and I was like, this is going extremely slowly, even for like mechanical hard drives. So I finally realized that, oh, it's just logging a massive amount of data with A time, turn it off. And I think that fixed it for then, and it should kind of fix it. And that fixed that performance issue for me. And it also explained I have a Samsung PM1725. It's a 3.2 terabyte enterprise grade SSD. And I think I have over a petabyte of writes on it, and I think a lot of that was A-time logging. Let me go try that on PBS and see how that goes. Actually, I do have another system running. Let me open another system, and I have another system running PBS that I can throw off A-time on and see how that goes. So I'm going to log SSH into it right now. 1.4. Okay, so let's see. So this is yet another Proxmox server I have running. This one's my main one that does a lot of the actual backups and stuff. This guy actually has PBS running on it, and I use it, should use it quite a bit. I think I have it set to run automatically, and I don't check it nearly as much as I should. 8007. So, I probably typed that in wrong, but, okay, so ZFS get A-time, and it's going to list it for all my snapshots. Okay, let's do just grep on. Might match something. But I'm pretty sure running A-time grep on should tell me if there's anything set to on, because yeah, I would say off. If I do grep off, it'll show me if it's off. And then if I run it on the pools, which I'd actually do it, ZFS get A-time d/PBS, it's set from off. So I'm pretty sure that discount SSD /PBS is the one I'm using to store PBS data on, and it is set to off. Yes, let's save it. Okay, so this here is my primary PBS system I use a lot. So let's see what it's been doing. Recently, tasks, nothing running. Okay. So if I look under discount SSD, which is my data store, which I believe is set up as a ZFS data store. Yeah. Has like 33,300 snapshots, 14 VMs are being backed up to it. Heavy deduplication. I haven't ran into any issues on here. I think I turned A-time equals off a month ago at least, so it's had it off for a while. Pin a kernel. I think I've had it off for a while. I will go look at the Proxmox forum. I'm curious what errors they're running into, because to my knowledge, from what I've seen with PBS, is it's using their metadata they set about their chunks for it. I didn't think they were using A-time or how the file system reports it. So I'd love to see what those exact errors are and see if I can get a better clue. Yeah, I really can't comment on it. It's working for me without A-time on, but there's a lot of weird edge cases, so there definitely might be issues. You can use PVE/EFI boot tool to pin a kernel. I actually didn't know about that. I haven't done too much with their boot tool, but I think part of it was I can pin an older kernel. It's just I'm curious if they have 5.19 in their repositories to pin. Because I haven't seen in the Proxmox release notes the, where is it? The newer kernels opt-in. And either you're right where it's already installed and you can just pin it using that tool. Oh, there we go. There, it found it. There you go. Cool. Let's actually... Okay, so it looks like it actually found it. And I believe now if I cd/boot ls... yeah, it looks like this guy, which is original Proxmox 7.3, if no updates, has 5.15. And it doesn't look like it has 5.19, so I'm guessing by optional, what they mean is you can install it after. So it looks like they have 5.19 in the repositories as a PVE kernel. So let's try that. Apt install pv-kernel-5.19 and see what it does. I forget what exactly all these are. This one's trying to update on my system. c/boot. This is my 7.2 system I'm in now. Yeah, it hasn't cleaned up the old kernels. Did I have? I think, what was the last command I ran? I did run dist upgrade, so it can't clean those up. I am pretty sure in this guy, /boot is not mounted separately, so if I run df-h, there's no /boot here, so it does have access to the full 311 gigs. Looking back to my 7.3 system that I'm trying to install 5.19 on, I can look at it, hit yes, it'll download 77 megs of files and need 400 megs of disk space, and I will have 5.19. I'm curious if I have to pin it using PVE tool like Jeff showed, or if I can, if I have to pin it using that tool, or if it will just automatically switch if I install the new one. I'm guessing it'll automatically switch. Now the other thing I'm curious about, back to my 7.2 system that I've ran the upgrade to 7.3, is it looks like it's installed 0.74. So it looks like it's installed it correctly, and I'm guessing those errors are due to my failed boot drive. Let's run PVE boot tool on here and see what I can see. Is this guy running EFI boot? I forget. Okay, the config does grub. Okay. Okay, so yeah, both of these have two versions. This guy, the lower one here, is my dead drive that it can't access. No, I won't give you my SSH keys for my poor systems. Anyways, you can't access these guys publicly. They're just test systems that get reinstalled super often. But it looks like my dead drive doesn't have the new kernel because it can't access it anyways. The working drive does have 0.74, which is the newer kernel. So I'm guessing when it reboots, it'll switch kernel correctly. And I'm going to get this system that I upgraded ready to be rebooted. So, yeah. Let's go. I'm going to go hibernate all of these guys here. For future stuff, I am... Cool. Thanks, Jeff. That's what I thought. I'm going to test it and confirm it just for fun, but yeah, that's cool. Thanks for letting me know. And then I can pin it, so if I want to use a older version for some reason, because sometimes it breaks stuff, then I can pin it and it won't upgrade it. So that's cool. Thanks for letting me know. If you're curious, this system, I'm playing around with file systems and storage things that support different sized disks, because I want to see if you have like a pile of old mismatched disks, how well you can use it. So I'm just setting up a ton of test VMs for that now. Slowly getting through all that testing now, but here's my Proxmox test 1, which is going through. Glad I could help you, Cyclo 12, with the Proxmox system and performance. Yeah. Turning on huge pages. Yeah, I need to poke at huge pages. That's another thing. So much stuff to learn. Like, I think I know a good amount, but it's just, the more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn. So this is LS CPU. Okay, this I'm pretty sure is my... No, this is a VM. Okay, I have too many systems. I'm getting them confused. But this guy is just... This is my test VM that has been upgraded to the latest 5.19 kernel. So I'm going to try powering it off. I'm going to reboot it once my host comes back online. So now my .80 host should have, once my test Proxmox system shuts down in just a second or two, it should have be able to reboot and boot into 7.3. Actually, it already says 7.3. So it looks like it updated whatever file tells it the version here. So without rebooting, it just says I have a newer version. But I'm not running the newest kernel yet, so I still want to reboot to get that newest kernel. I don't think it's changed very much going from 0.64 to 0.74 by default. But let's go. It's probably a good idea to move VMs on it before you upgrade it, but also I've just upgraded it with VMs running and the VMs didn't have any issue running it, so it's kind of not technically best practice, but it worked. So yeah, everything shut down in here, so this is a different system. This guy, yeah, I'm gonna go reboot this system and hopefully it comes back online. I do actually have IPMI to remote into this guy, but I don't want to turn it on now. It's an awful Java client, which actually I probably can show you right now if you want to see it. The annoying thing with these older IPMI boards, and this board isn't even that old at this point. This board isn't even that old, but it's an older IPMI system. And what that means is it's basically just a huge pain to get all the security stuff working. Yes, I should be using Windows. I really should be using Windows Terminal. I've actually done extremely low amounts of tweaking on this system, because this is kind of a system I use for like live streaming and like recording video and other things, so I don't want to put a ton of personal stuff for other things, so it's just the programs I need. But yes, using tabs is really nice. When I'm on my Linux system, I love setting up like tons of tabs for all my systems. And I have this weird thing where I memorize tab 1's the local system, tabs 2, my main server, all of that. So I'm used to doing that, but don't have Windows Terminal. I can actually probably go to their Windows Store and install it now. Just have TrueNAS left to move. Yeah. TrueNAS, I have like an interesting thing, because TrueNAS really has a great UI for ZFS, and I'd be happy if Proxmox would copy or inherit some of that. I kind of wish Proxmox would get some of those apps on there, because Proxmox's ZFS, in my opinion, it's fine to set it up from the terminal, set it up from their web interface, but doing it in the GUI is just much more powerful, at least for me, who's very used to doing it in their GUI. I really need to get more water. Give me guys like 10 seconds to get water, I'm sorry. Cool. Got more sense. Yeah, I think I was talking about TrueNAS, how they have a really nice way of managing ZFS, and the way it lets you set up disks and multiple pools and stuff in their web interface is really nice. And doing it, I have actually just gotten used to doing all my SMB shares via Samba, but Samba's another tool that it's like, if you have a GUI, it's really easy to discover what you want to do. But if you don't have a GUI, it's a lot more of a pain to like read the man file for the configs and see what you have to do. Having a GUI really simplifies things. So while I get the whole, you can do it in a command line and do all these things, and a lot of these tools are just essentially a GUI for a command line interface, it is quite nice to just be able to, it is quite nice to have a GUI that you can easily just use and discover things. So I think having both a good command line and a good GUI is very nice to have from an interface. I see containers being really useful because either you can use like the turnkey Linux Samba share, or you can just set up one with Debian and a Samba share. About TrueNAS inside Proxmox, I've actually used it a few times in different things. I've ran it as a complete VM where I have virtual disks for TrueNAS. And it's mostly I use it because of the built-in app support and stuff, which makes some of those things very simple to use. Yeah, it's not fully optimal running ZFS on type of ZFS, and there's a bit of overhead, but from everything I've seen, it shouldn't lead to data loss, because I don't think there's anything about layering it. It hurts performance and stuff a little bit, but shouldn't really matter, but it should work fine. I've also done it where you pass through the disks, which is the most optimal, But a lot of the times, those large disks, yeah, I ran it. Mostly it works fine. I mean, yeah, it's a virtual disk, works fine. I've also done it with passthrough, and I kind of don't like doing that because I like Proxmox to manage my storage, so then I can run all my VMs on top of Proxmox storage. If you're just going to use those disks for a NAS, it makes a lot of sense to do passthrough, or especially PCIe passthrough if your system supports it. But often what I like to do is I like to have multiple large VMs and want to split that storage up. I could have Proxmox go back to the true NAS and add that as storage, but it seems like circular redundancies. Yeah. And narrate to your running Samba on my PVE host directly. That's actually what I am personally doing for my main personal file share. This storage and video project shares that I have most of my data in. That's just Samba running on a PVE host. It's not fully optimal, but I've had it running that way for years now, and it's like you, I've just kind of kept doing it that way. If I was to reset it up, I'd probably set up my different shares on different containers. I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing, but it works pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy how little Samba's changed. It's pretty solid. And yeah, there's a lot of new fancy features like SMB Direct and stuff that let you get a ton of speed off of it. But with modern CPUs, I've filled 10 gigabit with an SSD on a server with no extra configuration beyond the normal. So for kind of home and small business and without ridiculous hardware, it's very easy to set up and get quite good performance out of, which I like. And after all of my talking, I should be able to have that system back up. Cool. Looks like it rebooted successfully. Let me get into this guy. HTOP. See, identifier new name dash. Yep, 5.15.74. So, Bicyclo, I probably run this soonish. I don't know. I don't know how much longer my voice can go. We were talking about putting TrueNAS with ZFS on something, or something on Proxmox on a ZFS ZVol VM store. I've done both. I guess I've done kind of it the three ways, which is have Proxmox handle ZFS and run a container or something lightweight on top of that to just do Samba shares or NFS or whatever you want to share it with. I've done Proxmox with ZFS with TrueNAS running on that, and then NAT shares. Normally I just do this because I want some specific TrueNAS feature, like TrueNAS has a nice easy GUI for doing things like time machine backups. TrueNAS has a lot of like easy plug-and-play Plex, Nextcloud, other little apps. If you want to use their interface for that, it can be very nice. And then if you want to have the most robust storage, running it with passthrough is probably the way to go. And then the other great thing with running it with passthrough is those disks are direct disks. So if you want to just take all those disks out, put them in another system of ZFS, and mount them, you have all your data. One of the disadvantages with doing passthrough, though, is you can't use backups using something like you can't do backups using something like PBS. So you have to back it up using TrueNAS itself. So if you have PBS backing everything up and your storage that you're using by your TrueNAS VM isn't that big, I think it makes a lot more sense to just set it up with a virtual disk and let PBS handle that, because then it's just backed up with everything else instead of being a separate backup job. But yeah, it looks like my system upgraded to 7.3 without any issues. They didn't show any issues in the release notes. I haven't seen anything large. I haven't seen anything reported as a large issue, but I mean, I'd probably rate if it's a production system just to be sure if there's going to be any issues. But yeah, it looks like it's starting up again. And yeah, I don't have any issues. If I want to start up some of my other VMs I had on here, they're starting without an issue. There we go. And then yeah, this is one thing I wanted to do. And actually, for the suggestion, here is the Windows terminal I got on here. Oh, come on. Oh, here's my Windows terminal I've just set up, and I'm going to switch everything over to Windows terminal is a whole lot better than the old command line one. So I'm going to SSH into that physical system I have here at 80. And then I'm going to SSH into my VM in just a second. And then, yeah, I can create a tab, and then I can make the text big so it's easy to read for everyone. And then I can do SSH. SSH 192.109, I believe. Yeah. And then, A. And now this guy's running 5.19.17. So yeah, this guy has the 5.19 kernel. I don't keep up with kernel release notes to know exactly what has changed. To my knowledge, there's no major change going from 5.15 to 5.19. It's probably for newer hardware support. So if you're on something like 13th gen Intel or the newest EPYC 9004 series or stuff like that, having the latest kernel helps a lot. But this is an old Broadwell-based system, so it's not needed. Typically, when you're on an old system, not using bleeding edge features, a kernel update doesn't make a huge difference. That actually looks different. The preamp dynamic, I'm curious what that means. Let me go switch over to this different one. And yeah, what's that mean? I'm curious what preamp dynamic means in the Linux kernel. So it looks like they support it in 5.12. Wasn't rebooting via debug. Please let me know if someone has better interface. Preemption. Okay. Pre-boot kernel version of kernel flavors are stopping different use cases. I need to do some more Googling about the preemption. Thanks for letting me know, Jeff, about issues on 5.15. I'm curious, are you talking about the older 7.0 with, that was used by Proxmox 7.2? Because my main system, I believe, this guy, well, this guy's the not PBS, the main Proxmox storage. I believe this guy has been running 7.2-11, and I've had quite a few VMs. I need to fix my backup errors, but I've had, like, here's a Veeam one, which I use to back up a lot of my Windows systems. I have a Windows domain controller. No noticeable issues. I'm curious what those issues have been. The annoying thing with any computer stuff, you want to do a lot of edge cases, which are really hard to reproduce. I've had some just weird ones. But back to... I'm curious what it means. Preemptive multitasking, which is what I think it's something like... When I hear preempt, I think it's something... Oh, passing through the GPU. Okay, that makes sense. I haven't done a ton of GPU pass-through. I'd love to talk more about GPU stuff in Proxmox because I played with it a little bit more. Because when I was poking around on this system, I realized for if you have a VM like something like this guy here, you can go under hardware, and then you can go under display and change it to VirGL. And VirGL should be able to take the graphics horsepower of the GPU in your system and then pass it through to a VM. So that way you can have one GPU, a lot of VMs, you don't need to have software support from like NVIDIA or AMD, and it all runs it. I was playing with it the other day on another Proxmox system that has an RX 480 in it. And it was actually running Unigine Heaven at I think 1080p or something at 30 FPS. So it's fairly reasonable amounts of graphical horsepower. The issue I had with it though was it seems like Spice just can't move enough data. It looks like Unigine Heaven's running fairly smoothly, but then the Spice interface is struggling to keep up. And I'm not sure if there is a I'm not sure if there's a Spice option. I looked at it a little bit. I believe you have to use Spice with it. You can't use that. There might be another way to get remote desktop from it via like VNC directly, but I'd love if there was a good way to do it. The other annoyance with VirGL is it's Linux only at this time. So Windows VMs, which is typically what I'd want to be playing games on or doing other graphically intensive things, aren't supported. So that really isn't, at this point, a great solution for doing things like having a gaming setup. My dream in the future would be something like I could buy a high-end graphics card and have it automatically dynamically allocate in software how much each VM gets, and I don't need to rely on like NVIDIA or AMD or Intel, whoever the GPU vendor is, in splitting it. Because then that kind of gives those companies the full control over like locking it down on low-end products. And I like something simple. I've wanted to play with stuff like VMware Horizon before, and that full like fancy way of doing virtual desktops, but it's a huge amount of software and hardware and licensing, particularly, to get it working correctly. UHack, I'm from the Bay Area. Yeah, thanks for the suggestion about spice options. I think, okay, it wasn't this system, but I think I was playing with it under options, and it was spice enhancements, I believe, are mostly like nice feature. Okay. Folder sharing, I believe, lets you just share files between latency. I'm going to have to do I'm going to have to look at the preemption. I have not heard of that and played with it before. Looking Glass, I know, can work a lot better than Spice. I need to play with Looking Glass, because I forget exactly how it works, and if it'll work with VirGL. Because even if I could get it working with just Linux VMs, I think that'd be kind of nice. Let's see. Do they have like a systems requirements that I could try? Host requirements, any graphics device? I guess if they're not doing Windows, well, I guess, well, there goes, hello again, Cyclo12. Well, at this time, if they only support Windows 10 as a guest, and VirGL, which is, I'd say, the only way in Proxmox to have a reasonable graphics performance without having to do pass-through, is with Linux VMs, that unfortunately doesn't work. Yeah, I'd love to play with Looking Glass some more. I haven't done it. I haven't really gotten into GPU pass-through that much personally. A lot of it is because I don't know, I've used like dedicated server hardware which doesn't really support GPUs. And then when I want to play games, I kind of have a separate system often. So that hasn't been a huge issue. But I want to play with it more, and I really hope it works better in the future, because it's been locked down a lot by the manufacturers to try to keep you to buying their enterprise-y hardware. Yes, let me look through that. When I was doing that spice testing for the VirGL, it was over a gigabit network connection. Both systems had reasonable performance. It might have been using a little bit of CPU, but I'm not sure. And back to here, back to the spice enhancements. Folder sharing, I think, lets you copy data between it. Video streaming, I believe Spice has a way to optimize it for video. So if you're using a desktop interface like this, it has like smart compression that tries to, I think it's lossless, use desktop interfaces where things are being moved around and be smart about that. But if you're doing video, I think it uses something like H.264 or more traditional video compression that is much more optimized for video like this. And with that optimization, I tried using it. It didn't seem to change it, so I'm not sure if I didn't set it up right or something. I need to poke more at Spice to see if I can get that to work better, because that'd be really cool if I could get it to work. So I can have a host with a graphics card. I can have Linux VMs that actually are graphically accelerated. That would be cool. Looking through the list, it's not a monitor. Yeah, Looking Glass isn't a monitor. From what I've seen and heard, Looking Glass, you run some sort of thing like an NVIDIA GPU, and then it will, you have an NVIDIA GPU, and then it will have the data stream that it outputs to the display also copied to the host over PCI Express, so you can have a super low latency way to view it on your host monitor, which is really great if you have like a Linux system and then a Windows VM for gaming. Doesn't seem to be built for doing. Does anyone know, can you use Looking Glass if you have a GPU split via like the PCIe, I forget what NVIDIA calls it, but it lets you take one graphics card and turn it into multiple. I really used to use it for grid, but what's it called? NVIDIA vGPU, I think. Because could you use Looking Glass? Well, I don't see anything explicitly. I see a few forum posts, but I don't see anything explicitly saying either way. I think, to my knowledge, what NVIDIA wants you to do is use their NVENC encoder to encode it via like H.264, H.265, and then stream it out to people. And that's what I think services like Stadia and NVIDIA Grid and a lot of these online game streaming services are doing. And I believe they have a very low latency way of essentially taking the frame buffer from the graphics card and putting it into the NVENC encoder, so it doesn't have to go to the host and back and get extra processing. Back to UHack with my, how do I back up my VMs? So I'm using PBS to back up everything. A lot of the VMs I kind of don't really care about, so I don't back up that much, because there's a lot of things like just things I'm playing around with, so it's not the most important to have. But what I will, what I actually have is, I think I did a video on it a very long time ago. I have a co-located server in a data center that I can send data to, and I do that for all my important files. So it's sent to a co-located system, so kind of cloud, not really. Not a very common solution, though. I really haven't played with very much cloud storage because of that. I should pay for a little bit of cloud storage just to play with it. I believe... let me think. I forget, PBS can clone to another PBS system. So you can do that to clone to a cloud VM node. But generally, if you're using something like AWS and VM storage attached to it directly, that is very expensive. So you don't want to do that. I know you can just mount S3 storage or something, and you might be able to add that to a data store and clone to it. I haven't played with mounting S3, so really I can't talk about a reasonable way to back up to cloud storage right now, actually, unfortunately. I guess I use PBS to a co-located server, which means if you have access to a VM, it's nice to use it, but I don't. Vax the Stampede, it'd be great if they had RDP as a choice of display. Yes, it would. Because Windows works very well with RDP, and I believe Microsoft has done a lot of tuning with RDP to actually try to make it work fairly well for desktop uses, so it can have pretty good performance with like video and I think games and those sorts of applications if set up correctly. Because Microsoft has their, I forget what it's called. It's a desktop client where you have a lot of different ones, where you have users and it automatically fire up a VM or a session for them, and it's relatively powerful graphics-wise if you set it all up correctly. So I wish they could set that up too. But I think a lot of the problem is no one for KVM has really built a great virtual graphics processor, and I think everyone's kind of moving away from it too, because the solution is using NVIDIA's vGPU solution, where NVIDIA or AMD or whoever else is your graphics manufacturer is splitting up the graphics card, and you're almost doing pass-through that virtual to that chunk of the graphics card, instead of having the host take like DirectX calls and pass it multiple DirectX calls from multiple VMs and then pass it to a single graphics card. Yeah. Are you saying RDP runs at 30 FPS? I haven't played with RDP, or is it Spice? Both of them, most of the time these remote sessions really don't feel great, and I've gotten used to working with very poor remote sessions, but it's not something I want for gaming or primary use desktop. I'm actually curious if how cheap could I get a vGPU? So it looks like, no, they don't have, they have Red Hat and that, which I believe both of these would be running KVM, so it would be supporting that. CSPs, okay, so these large companies, and then servers, they do that. Okay. What do I say if I like start a trial? Okay. How much do I have to pay for the... It feels kind of annoying I have to pay for software to split the GPU I paid for. But, like a T4, I think a relatively cheap out of that list. A10. I don't know the exact codes, prices on these, but that's a non-cheap that's still a fairly expensive graphics card. And then RDP registry credit. I am adding that to the list of things to look at because I have not seen that. Most of the time I'm just used to doing like management things over RDP, so that's not an issue for me. But how do I buy? How much would it cost me? Yeah. Oh, they're not even... Okay, so here we go. Perpetual licenses for virtual workstation. That's for their things. I don't want that. For desktop, VPC is probably what I'd like if I'm doing this. Per CCU. What's CCU? Is that a... I'm assuming the CCU is the units that it gets split into? I'm not sure, but it looks like if I want to run like 4 systems, that's $400 on top of like an NVIDIA A10, which is a low-end Ampere card. I don't know how much these cost. Let's see if CDW has it. Oh, there's a single slot guy. Okay, that's $8 grand. That is a lot of money, so unfortunately, NVIDIA looks like they really want quite a bit of money for setting up their vGPU, which is annoying. Setting up their vGPU, which I wish it would be cheaper. I wish they'd offer some like consumer enthusiast option on like Titan class cards or 3090s or 4090s or just GeForce cards in general, but NVIDIA wants their money. I forget how AMD does it, but from what I've heard, it's not awesome either. So that's most of it with graphics. I, unfortunately, have not worked with graphics anywhere nearly as much in Proxmox as I should be. I'm going to try to do that more in the future and try to do more pass-through things. And hopefully I can learn about that some more and get some more ideas off of that. Because I'd love to get a better way for doing like multiple users, or preferably some like fairly automated way, and something that would actually be willing to be good enough to use as like my main desktop. Because a lot of these solutions are, it feels a little iffy, and potentially issues. I think I've pretty much done testing 7.3. I set up my VM with it, and it's working fine. I'm going to upgrade like my main server and a few other nodes to 7.3, but that's on a later date. That's going to be later because these guys are doing my router mostly, which I need to be streaming right now. But yeah, no real issues. It's, I like to play with Ceph a little bit more. That's the cool one. The RAID Z is kind of cool that they added support for it. I believe the old versions had it though in the, not going to test it. Not going to test it, but I believe it supported it in the older versions. It's just now they've added a GUI. And it looks like a lot of little improvements. I don't think, it's not really a fundamental change. Fundamental change to how it all works, but it's just nice to see a little improvements. Little things. Point settings, yeah. And do you have any AMD EPYC CPUs to work with? No, I don't. I'd like to play with some of the newer ones. I would love to be able to play with the newer AMD EPYC CPUs, but I've been keeping track of their used prices, and unless I want to get first gen used, which is a little bit from what I've seen, because second gen and newer have the IO die, I believe. I forget if second gen had the IO die or not, but they switched the IO die, got rid of that, and it's kind of a different architecture. Coffee machine computer story. I can just switch to camera zoom. Coffee machine camera store. Coffee machine computer store. So actually, I got that coffee machine for free from someone else. I think they were like, hey, it's broken. You kind of know how to fix stuff. Poke at it if you want. Otherwise, it's yours. And then I kind of was a little bit like, I don't know how to fix this. I'm not going to get it fixed. So I was like, well, let's try building a computer in it. So I think I tossed it, unfortunately. It really wasn't. It was not built that well, but it was a, I think it was like an old high-end espresso machine. Those weren't cheap machines. And then I found out an MATX motherboard fits in it fairly well. So I kind of just took an old case, cut everything out but the motherboard tray. And I think I used a lot of like hot glue and wood. It was pretty nasty construction. Put the power supply and the hard drives at the bottom. Put the CPU and motherboard at the top. It was actually a super cool looking computer. I kind of miss it. I should do more cool case mods like that, because I'm just running like boring cases for most of my systems now. It's just chunk of metal. I need to find more things to do cool case mods into, but let me know if you have any ideas of systems or devices. I'm like looking around to see if there's something that'd be fun to do right now, and I don't see it, so there. For Vasta Stampede, are you doing Hyper-V nested? Is that with Hyper-V inside of Proxmox, or Proxmox through Hyper-V? I haven't set up nested vert, because I believe you have to set a kernel parameter for Proxmox to do nested virtualization. I should try doing that. And then Hyper-V, I forget how you do Hyper-V nested virtualization. What's it look like? Okay, you can do it. Okay. Yep, and it looks like you need a specific processor for Hyper-V. But I haven't played with it, so I can't really comment. Error 42, how I've gained so much knowledge. A lot of it's personal. Proxmox Windows Hyper-V. Okay, let me play with that and add that to my list of things to poke at. And try to see if I can reproduce. So, for knowledge, yeah, a lot of it's personal interest and this sort of stuff. I try to do a good amount of research and stuff for making these videos now. I'm trying to do like more and more testing, so when I test something, I run as much info as I can, and I kind of learn from what I do. And then I also kind of keep up with what's happening in the industry and just read up on news, and it's kind of just information just keeps building inside my brain, hopefully. And I do personal IT work stuff, and I've definitely learned a lot through it, but I think I actually don't use Proxmox in that environment. It's a Hyper-V environment, but yeah, a lot of it's I've kind of just done weird configs and poked at it, and every error, it's kind of a way to learn something. And I think, I don't know, I've been doing this like 10 some years, and it's just a lot of information builds, and I like just working with it. That's interesting that it freezes. That's going to be an interesting one to troubleshoot. Out of curiosity, what hardware are you working with running that on? I'm curious if it's, or if I have something similar of what it might be due to. Okay, instant virtualization. What else? Yeah, let me know if you have any more questions. I think I've mostly gotten over things I could want to do with 7.3, so there's that info. If you guys keep asking questions, I will probably keep poking around on setting up some scripts and stuff for a video that has been unreleased now, testing mixed size storage. So let me know if you know any other storage solutions that support different disk drives and actually uses multiple drives to their capacity. Right now I have unRAID, I have unRAID storage spaces, BTRFS, and SnapRAID with mergerFS. I know FlexRAID used to be a thing, but it looks like it has died currently, so it's a dead project, so it looks like it's not part of it. Synology has SHR, which is really nice. Synology has SHR, but I don't have Synology hardware. I think there's a few other proprietary ones that I don't have to play with. Let me get a little bit more issues. Let me get more water. This is going to kill my voice quicker than I thought it would. But on the Ryzen stuff, I actually was going to switch my main server to Ryzen, I think a 1700. But the issue was, I think it was the segfault issue. I think I looked at the CPU. It had the config that was, it had like the stepping number that said it had an issue. So I swapped it out, and I think it still had an issue with the 1700. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm done playing with new Ryzen chips, and I'm going to just go back to Xeons for running server stuff. And now I have switched back to using a, I'm using Ryzen 5000 on my desktop. I've done some testing with it. I've done some testing with Ryzen 5000, but it's mostly used as a desktop, so I don't have a ton of experience with testing that sort of stuff on it. GPU issues with the proprietary driver. I have an NVIDIA GTX 1080 in that system running the NVIDIA proprietary driver, and it is working fine. I've had very minimal issues. I'm running CUDA programs with it fairly frequently without problems. But NVIDIA drivers typically have issues. NVIDIA drivers, I have heard, have a lot of issues. I don't think I've installed NVIDIA drivers on Proxmox ever, because the Proxmox system itself doesn't really let you use any GPU horsepower. It pretty much all does that. Oh, have I had issues recognizing the second disk on clusters? Do you mean like having a second node with storage? I haven't done too much with clusters. I'd love to have a cluster set up as my main one, but its power consumption is a big issue. So I can't justify running another couple 100-watt server all the time. Hyper-V for Docker. Are you running Windows containers by any chance? I have not poked with them very much. I haven't poked with Windows. I haven't poked with Hyper-V and Windows containers. I haven't poked with Docker and Windows containers very much at all. But I'd like to see what that is. I'll poke at it for a bit and see if I can find anything else. I don't have a Epic 7402 to play with though. I'm curious how much those cost. I'm gonna go Google it on my other tab. I really hope Epic gets cheaper because it's a really nice system. Yeah, hopefully my 1080 doesn't catch fire. I'm curious what burned. I mean, I'm curious what would have burned on that 1080. I mean, mine's been running fine. I actually put a Kraken X10 on it so I can put like an AIO cooler. So I removed all the heat sinks for the memory and the VRMs, but there's a fan blowing at it, and it gets hot, but it shouldn't be that hot. So I'm guessing it's fine. I don't know. I've heard issues of some graphics cards melting connectors, and hopefully that's not an issue. Okay. Thanks for letting me know, Back to Stampede. I will play around with that. Maybe I'll test it on my Ryzen desktop and see if I can get any ideas. But that's a much newer system, so. Yeah, Eton 975, that's probably a reasonable idea of power saving modes. Those can cause a lot of weird stuff, but I'd guess that Epic would have like tested that more. That's kind of what I think they test them on server platforms, but it still is a lot of weird cases. Use of SnapRAID. I think the SnapRAID does make a whole lot of sense for doing things like video archives and stuff. To my knowledge, SnapRAID does not handle often changed files very well. It does not handle files that are larger than a single disk very well. But it does do quite well because you can individually get all the data from all the drives, and that will work. Actually, on the note of SnapRAID, let's go set that up. As part of my testing various disk size tools, Yeah, I agree, Eton. I think they test it better, and that's kind of what I think you're partially paying for in server chips, but I guess not. But then again, there's so many edge cases when making a CPU. There's already tons of hypervisors. There's then those amount of hypervisors that you could run on them. Yeah, testing CPUs must be a pain, and also intermittent errors are just such an issue to work with, but yeah, I haven't seen that before, so I can't comment on it, but that must be annoying. Yeah, this system is going to be running SnapRAID in a little bit as part of my testing. So if I run LSBOK on here, I have a ton of different drives. Actually, let me just find the IP address of this guy. I'm going to remote desktop into it instead of using the session, the no VNC session, so it's SSH. I believe it was. Looks like it was. Yeah, so I'm going to get this guy ready to do SnapRAID. 136. Okay. So yeah, this guy I'm going to be setting up using SnapRAID. I'm probably going to do this on my own time, but if you have more questions, feel free to go for it. I kind of threw like a 100 gig drive in here, just fun to see how it handles a single larger drive, but 100 gigs is going to be my parity. Everything else is going to be a data drive. What file system should I use? Eton 975. Yeah, I expect worse Minto going forward because they cut a lot of their testing and stuff over the last 6 years. Yeah. Yeah, the i225, that's annoying, especially coming from Intel, who kind of is known for having the best network cards. So it kind of sucks that they had a dud in the line of otherwise very good things. Good night, Vax the Stampede. I will hopefully find out more info, and good luck on fixing that Hyper-V issue. Yeah, that's annoying. The Intel Arc story, I mean, it is just a pain to develop new graphics cards, but it does feel like there's a lot of pushing out kind of beta stuff. But I guess I wouldn't say beta, but it's like not perfect, just good. I don't know. Hopefully, I am excited though to see Intel and AMD actually competing again, because it was annoying. I forget how many years. I think like 6 or something years, where it was all it was we're going, it's a quad core with slightly more features and slightly more clock speed. I'm glad we're like, core count's gone way up. Cores are much faster. It's nice. I'm going to zoom into this. Let's see what we got. What file system? Let's just use ext4. Sudo mfs .ext4 /vb. Oops. And it's going to take a sec to format all of these drives. I guess that is, maybe I should do it. I wish someone would, but I'm tempted to do it. Just make like a nice interface for SnapRAID so it kind of works like Unraid does. So I can just kind of point at all these drives and it will work well. I could probably make one. I might be tempted to if I like it. I don't know. Do I sub donations? I don't have a Patreon or any of that stuff set up. I do believe I have Super Chat, and the money does go to me if you give Super Chats there. So if you want to give me money to play with hardware, that is one way to do it, if you feel like you would like to do so. I believe I get 70% if you give it, so that's what Google gives you. Massive IGP started in Hasbro and put 8 cores on, but yeah, they decided to be greedy a bit until 2017. Yeah. And then what kind of made me think they're even more greedy was they went from 4 cores in 7700K to 6 in the 8700K to 8 to 10 really quickly. It's like, and they're selling for about the same price. I don't know. It seems greedy, but I mean, I forget what all my disks, I forget the alphabet. I don't know what all these disks, E, F, G, okay. G, H, I. Yeah, this, if I made a Gluster in Proxmox, I don't think I've used Gluster in Proxmox. I haven't poked with Gluster in a while now. I don't think they natively support Gluster FS here, so you'd have to just add it as a, add it as a generic storage. Do they add Gluster? No. Oh, they do actually have Gluster FS. Yeah, let me play with that. I'd like to play with that. I believe Gluster FS is file-based mostly, so if you replicate it, you actually see files on both of the systems. So I need to play with Gluster. I really want to play with more Gluster stuff. The problem is I don't want to chew through too much power in doing so, so I need to find a way to be responsible with my power consumption. Yeah. Yeah, with the subscription-based licensing, I had one interesting thought that I think goes the other way, which was a lot of the hardware I'm already buying has disabled cores in it. So if you buy like an i7 now, it probably has the cores that the i9 has just turned off. So it would be nice to be able to turn it on in the future. It's just, I think about how Intel would handle it, and it's just, I can't think of a good way to handle it. And I think the current way, which is the features of the silicon is tied to the actual chip and you can't change it, is a lot nicer. Because then it would be like, oh, they're going to charge you for a subscription. And then is it tied to the CPU? Or is it tied to the motherboard? Is it tied to an account? Because I don't want to pay yearly to have features. It would be nice to be able to use the disabled parts of my CPU, but I want to see a good way to do it. And I think I'd rather be able to never use those disabled parts of my CPU than having a subscription that's handled badly. Yeah, adding Gluster, I should play with Gluster more. Yeah, I'll probably do a good amount more Gluster testing in the future. Yeah, I'd love to do a little bit of Gluster testing in the future. Yeah, I should get some 1-liter boxes or something else. I don't know how well you can see it. Let's see if it's visible right now. But I have this little 1-liter PC. Is a Dell 3050, I want to say, that I've been running for actually a while now. It's part of my, I'm trying to kill all these 256 gig SSDs to see endurance numbers. But it's a really nice system. These are super great for being low power and nice. Yeah, they're still not super cheap though, which is annoying to me. I wish they were a bit, if they were, yeah, I could buy money to get a ton of these. I do like the super fast single systems though. If I get more systems, like this is an LGA 2011-3 system, and I think it idles at like 60 bucks. It idles at like 60 watts or something. And with like a few VMs, it's at 100, which really isn't bad for a system with 128 gigs of RAM and a pretty high-speed 6-core chip. So that's what I'm tempted. I'd like to get more of that sort of stuff. But 1 liters are super cute. I love these little guys. Hopefully I can find them cheap somewhere. Yeah. M900. I forget what the M900 has. It's a Lenovo box. I forget which generation. The other thing I like about the big servers is the drive expansion. And with these little mini systems, you get like on the newer ones an M.2 slot or two, and then you get a SSD or two, like a 2.5-inch slot or two. And if I want to do something like Ceph, where I want to have, like, let's say a mirror, 2 drives, and then a separate boot drive, now at 3 drives per system. And yeah, that's kind of annoying. Because I'd like to have expandable systems that are also low power. And I think the general issue is the bigger the system, which means the more of the bigger the system, so you have more expansion, means you have more controllers and stuff running, which means more power consumption. So I'd like to find a good middle ground there, but It's annoying. And I think one thing that also one thing with looking at the future of servers, with like the new Ryzen chips that came out recently, or the Epic chips, the massive ones with like 96 cores, it looks like the companies are working towards making chips as fast as they can and just making them super dense instead of trying to make each node lower powered. And I guess if you need like 1,000 nodes, it makes a lot more sense to have maybe 500 nodes instead of 1,000 if they were higher performance. But if you want to do lower power server testing, they're all going to idle at pretty high power. I'm guessing like these new systems of 12-channel memory, they're going to chew quite a bit of power, even at very low loads, because it's a lot of memory channels and just dies to make sure they're powered at all times. Yeah, yeah, Level 1 Techs, that's another really cool channel. I love seeing the in-depth stuff. Hopefully I see more of it on YouTube, because I think it's just hard to find people who are into playing with obscure and little things, because part of it being obscure is there's not a huge audience for it. I'm trying to get my hands on newer hardware, and software is easy to get my hands on, but hardware as I can, but you know, it's hard to get your hands on tons of hardware. I'm trying to get manufacturers hopefully to send me stuff, and I'm trying to buy what I can cheaply, so it's a combination. Few super micro servers with lots of 3.5-inch bays that are getting expensive. Yep. Those 1366 systems, it's pretty easy. Like I think I have like a couple of extra 1366 systems, another 2011 system or two. I can get a pretty nice cluster running now. It's just it'd be pulling 1,000 watts all the time, which I find is way too much for what I'd like to be running in power. And I mean, like, new desktop parts actually makes a really nice server. And on the topic of low power servers, ASRock's rack AM4 systems, I actually have in the co-located system I think I talked about a while ago. But these systems, I have found are quite nice boards for servers, and I'd love to work with more of them in the future. They're fairly low power. You can get them with 10 gigabit networking. Pretty good PCIe and SATA expansion, 2 M.2 slots, and IPMI. Yeah, that's a nice little board. I hope they make an AM5 version. And I really hope AMD makes like baby EPYC chips for AM5 that is built for this sort of platform. Because I'd like to see more low-end, I'd like to see something that competes with the Intel Xeon E lineup, just kind of low-end servers. Though I do know it's probably a fairly small market, because if you need more compute power, you just buy fewer, bigger servers. Yeah, I wish we'd have 240 here in the US too, but only so much you can do, I guess. 120s. I mean, then again, if your computer's pulling more than like 1,500 watts, it's beyond what you should be running as a normal desktop. And I guess most of the companies I've seen that run huge amounts of, once I think you get to companies of server racks where you have enough stuff that pulling more than 1,000 watts all the time, it's not that hard to run 240 to it, because you normally have split phase power. So you have 240 at the building, it's just split between the two phases. Yeah, IPMI is really nice. I wish we'd see more of it. I want to play with vPro. I don't know if I have a system that supports it. Hopefully I'll get my hands on a system that supports vPro, because what vPro should let you do if it meets all the marketing is the remote power on, remote power off, and play with the BIOS, and still have super low power consumption. I think you can still have like these little micro systems do it that only pull like a watt or two off, and you can have vPro turn it on. That's really nice. Yeah, my main desktop AM4 system with ASRock, been very happy. I have one of these ASRock AM4 boards. I've been very happy with that. There. Oh, Jeff, with your M900, how do you like vPro? Do you have it set up and do remote management with it, or what's your experiences with it? I think I kind of tried to set it up a while ago and I just didn't get it finished, and I got rid of that system for some reason, so. Yeah, that's the annoying thing with vPro, is it has really annoying system requirements. I think the easiest way to have like a kind of guaranteed system with vPro support is to buy like a Dell Optiplex or think something that has the vPro sticker on the front. But I think you need like Q670 or whatever the Q series processor is. You need the Q series, you need the whatever CPUs they want to put vPro on, which used to be not K series. Weird. Yeah. Only used it for power on and off. Yeah, I guess power on and off of vPro is great, but it's also, I guess you have Wake on LAN, but Wake on LAN's annoying to use at times, so vPro's a lot better of a way to do that. Why don't we like Overt? I used to play a lot with Overt in the day, and I think my video on setting up is still surprisingly popular. I want to do a video of setting up Overt again, because I haven't played with it in a long time. I think when I looked it up on their webpage, it's still like 4.5, which isn't that different. Are they? Yep, they're on 4.5. And if I take a look at their website, here, yeah, they're on 4.5 now. I think I was using like 4.3 or 4.2, so they really haven't gone up much up in numbers. But the numbers, I guess, don't really mean too much. The interface looks the same, but so does Proxmox 5 years ago, so it doesn't really tell you much. I think kind of the vibe I got from Overt is Overt's made for when you have lots of nodes, whereas Proxmox is really easy to install, and you can basically just go into the interface and use it with Proxmox. With Overt, you got to get their engine set up, and you can run it on a host, or you can run it in a VM on a host. It's a little bit more of a pain. I've definitely gotten it running though, but if you're having a single node, it's a lot easier just to do Proxmox. I really want to play with this though. I'm also worried because Overt, I believe, is just rebranded, is their open source kind of rebranded version of RHEL. And since Red Hat got bought up by IBM, hopefully they keep supporting it well. I don't know, they say 8.7. I'm not sure how the numbering is, because it looks like it's all different, but yeah, I don't know. I haven't kept up with RHEL. You don't hear about it that much, but it might be kind of a few large customers they're into. Yeah. I should play with Overt. I really need to get around to installing that on the system, but I haven't done that yet. Yeah. Yeah, no brand's perfect. I mean, yeah, I guess. Yeah, IPMI, it is a lot better. I think they're finally starting to do it. And they're finally starting to do it because I've used like a newer dRAC where it does it all in HTML5, and hopefully this will age well, because a lot of the old systems I've seen are using something like Java applets. Let me just show one of my systems I have, and it is extremely the Java applets can be a very big pain to run. So let's see what it goes. So just for fun. So what tab is that? Here's go. This is my this is that 80 server, my 2011-3 system. It's this guy here with a lot of test VMs on it. I can launch the Java applet, which will open a window saying it is now downloading something. It looks like it's downloaded it. It'll ask me if I want to execute it. It'll then open a Java's out to date on this system. Okay, that's my fault though. But then Java will download the application and say I have to have the security settings set perfectly to have it working. Yeah, X10 I believe is 2011-3, so that's when they started adding it. This Asus one's using Java, which is, yeah, it's another yucky one. I had like an old PowerEdge 2950 way back into the day. I know, like, I had a Windows XP VM to use it with, because that's the only way I could get it working. Oh, I didn't add it correctly, that's probably why. 124. Okay. Yeah, the amount of warnings you get with Java. So let's try doing this again. So it downloads my little Java applet. I get the new download. I want to execute it. Java fires up. Java asks me if I want to run this insecure application. I say yes. and then I finally get this. The other thing is, let me know if you know anything about it, but wow, actually it does work on this system. When I was testing this on another computer, it would just crash the moment I clicked on hard disk or USB. Maybe it's because it's a newer version of Java, but hopefully, maybe it's because it has a newer version of Java, but I don't know. Hopefully that's going to be fixed soon. Yeah, Overt has a lot of Ansible stuff. Yeah, I believe it because I believe Red Hat makes Ansible. I don't keep up with exactly who does what, but when I finish the Proxmox testing on this guy with these VMs I have on it, I'm probably going to do Overt stuff and hopefully finally get around to it, play with it, and just see how it goes. Hopefully they've changed it. I forget when I last used it. It's been a couple of years, but I want to play with Overt some more too. I haven't played with... I need to go play with the other ones a bit. I haven't played with like ESXi in a while either. I think they're on 7 point something now. I forget the exact number, but yeah. I used to run a lot more Red Hat stuff, a lot of CentOS stuff and that, but I've moved a lot more back to Debian stuff personally. CentOS dying because of Red Hat getting bought up wasn't only great, I guess, and also, I don't know, I've just gotten used to Debian. Partially Proxmox uses it too. I just gotten kind of happy with that ecosystem, but I should really keep looking around and not stick with one thing too long. Wow, it's already been over 2 hours. I am probably going to end this soon. So let me know if you have something else you'd like to talk about. Otherwise, I'm probably going to end this within a minute. I think this turned out pretty good for a first live stream. I think audio and video has mostly been working, so that's great. I need to fix my cameras turning off after 30 minutes, but thanks for tuning in, everyone who watched live, just being completely unannounced. Let me know if you want to see more of these in the future, if this is something I should keep doing every once in a while, and how that all should work. Yeah, if I should keep doing this sort of stuff in the future, and if I do, let me know if there's a better time for you. Better time to do this sort of stuff, because, yeah, I'm not sure what time zone it is. It's midday on a Tuesday, so I don't know. But thanks for watching. Stick around, there might be more of these.